If we share our story with someone who shows understanding and empathy, shame cannot survive. This was one of my favourite quotes that Brené Brown had given us time to learn and hear it. Hi, my name is Mary Sheils and welcome to my TED Talk. Let me take you back a few years, well, 30 years, when I was a 13-year-old girl. I'm the second youngest of 7 siblings, so the house was full, and it was full of fun and laughter. Don't get me wrong, there was the odd cross word, as you can only imagine, because after all, there was 9 of us living in the house. Mommy and Daddy installed good values and good behaviours in us growing up. And at school, I loved school. I loved socialising with my peers within school setting and out of school setting. And at that time, going back 30 years ago in that era, it started coming around because we're going into the age of being 13, liking boys and fancying boys and chatting about different things, about, hair and makeup and who we'd like to marry. And I could see as peers, they were getting excited, and TEDxDerryLondonderryStudio was the big boy band in that era, and they fancied each boy band or each person in the boy band. And I thought to myself, why do I not get those feelings that they're getting of excitement, the laughter when they were talking about them, planning their marriage? And I was sitting there thinking, I don't feel anything. I don't get this. I'm not connecting in this part. So I thought to myself, I'm only 13, so give yourself a break. This will come. It'll come in time. So as time went on, what I did do to blend in with friends, I pretended that I loved Gary out of TEDxDerryLondonderry and I would love to grow up and marry him and have children. I pretended all that. But I knew deep down within me that that wasn't really what was happening. But I just quite couldn't figure it out at that point. So as months passed on and I continued on being happy-go-lucky and mixing in various clubs and that and getting on great in school, it was like, not a brick wall, I don't want to say a brick wall, but the realisation hit me one day out of the blue when I realised, when I seen a girl the same age as me, and the feelings that I got of the fuzziness in my head, the giddiness, the feelings in my tummy, and the feelings that I could see my friends having when they talked about different boys that they fancied, growing up, getting married. I was getting that feeling. But my feelings was towards a girl. It wasn't towards the boys. And then the connection I made with myself was, I'm gay. I am gay. Oh my gosh, how am I going to survive this? So I remember that day it happened. Now, don't get me wrong, the feelings that I had were so lovely. My head was fuzzy. I to this day, as a 43-year-old woman, I still connect back to those feelings as a 13-year-old girl of them experiences. So that night I went home, and as a family we ate round the dinner table, and then the news had come on. We were all in the living room, and Gay Pride in London was happening at that time. And I remember sitting, and I could feel my body stiffening on the chair. My hands were sweating, my tongue was dry, and I thought, oh my gosh, does somebody know? Does somebody know that I'm gay? Because I haven't told anyone. I kept it in my head. I kept those feelings of excitement that I had felt earlier on to myself. So, and as I watched the news, and the reporter was more focused on the protesters standing along the side, which carried signs saying, this is not normal. God did not make men for men or women for women. So, and I thought, oh my gosh. And that is when I look back to this point now, that was the instant moment that shame formed within inside me. Reading those posters that the protesters carried. But not just that, the reporter had homed in on that and not for what people were fighting for, the gay people were fighting for. And I thought, no, I can't love this life, I can't. So I left the living room, I went up to my bedroom, and I stood in front of the mirror, a 13-year-old girl that I was. I eyeballed myself clear, directly in the mirror, and spoke out loud and said, you will never live this life. You can't live this life because you will never be accepted. In that split moment, I said, you will live a celibate life. At 13, I was able to make that decision and know that that decision would keep me safe. But as I made that decision, now as an adult looking back, I see the connection, that was the point. The 13-year-old girl disconnected herself from her mind and body. She lived in her mind and no longer lived in her body because the fear of the feelings, the feeling of the shame that lay deep within, she wanted them buried. Because for her to survive in the world, that's what she had to do. So when I made that decision of being celibate at 13, I did clearly because I wanted to feel safe and be accepted. That would roll into later on in life, that decision that 13-year-old girl made. So, as 13, after I made that decision, I felt a sense of freedom because I knew no one will ever know. It's in my head, so no one can't see what's in my head. So I continued on living. 13-year-old girl, full of life, still continued clubs, still continued to pretend, still continued to go on in education, travel, meet great friends over the years, and do work that I really love doing. So then as late on, as I moved into adulthood, and especially now going into the 30s, this is where life started to become, the 13-year-old girl started creeping back. The pain that this 13-year-old girl that was living in, that made that decision, is now in her 30s and she wants set free. But I didn't know how to go about doing that. I didn't know how to set her free. I didn't know how to set myself free. So as that was the realisation in my 30s, I'm going to step back a bit here. As I continued through my early adulthood, I got myself involved in positive workshops, self-esteem classes, reading self-help books, believing, oh, my confidence is developing. Don't get me wrong, my confidence did develop in areas, but certainly not in the area of living as who I really wanted to be, and that was a gay woman. So as I was continuing the self-growth programs of work, I was only scratching on the surface with myself. I didn't know how to go deep to set this 13-year-old and this 30-year-old woman and bring them together to connect and live as one and walk side by side, proud of being a gay woman. So as I went into my 30s, I was becoming more emotionally exhausted. I was finding it more difficult to try and hide who I was. I could feel myself, moving from job to job, dipping in and out of education, not completing anything. Again, this was all connected to the shame, the hurt, the anger, that I chose this life to hide out of pure fear. So then, as I got up and into late 30s, early 40s, I then decided I need to make this move forward and I need to drop into my body. But how was I going to do that? So what I had done, I finally allowed myself to be vulnerable. In 2009, Brené Brown hit the global stage, as we all know, and she talked about something that nobody wanted to go near, and that was how to be vulnerable, how to allow yourself to let go and be your true self, and living in courage and bravery, and how we find ourselves on that journey and how we allow ourselves to go on that journey. And that was like ding dong, that's exactly what I need to do. But how am I going to do it? Because I don't know how to do it. So as time moved on, I came to a stage in life, I did find a way of doing it. I allowed myself to go back and to meet the 13-year-old girl who made that decision to hide, that decision to protect, that decision to allow shame to grow right through her roots and up. I allowed myself to drop from my mind into my body to meet the 13-year-old girl and soothe her and to set her free from the pain and the hurt, and most of all, removing the shame from her so that we could grow into one person. Now, don't get me wrong, that was a very painful journey, but it was a journey that I mastered very, very well and connected very, very well in allowing us to manoeuvre as one, and the sensation from my mind flowing down through my body, and the connection we both met has now come into one. So now I don't allow shame to play any part in my life whatsoever. I hold myself up. I hold myself very well. I talk about my story, because the more we share our story, the more we shed our shame. And the more we shed our shame, the more that we are empowered, the courage that we continue to walk with, the bravery that we continue to step into, and most of all, the peace that we bring to ourselves. And out of it all was times strength equals self-worth, and something that I now value and feel genuinely real inside of me as an adult. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.